Remember me? Okay, hi. Hello. My last couple videos have been very heavily researched, talking at the camera, because that's the content that I enjoy both making and watching. But the other content that I kind of like watching is just chatty conversational videos, because they're a little bit parasocial and I kind of love them for that. Especially in this pandemic, which we are still in a pandemic, by the way. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, hello! I have an extremely vague idea of what I'm doing makeup-wise. I have no idea how I'm gonna get to that point, or even really a visualization of what it looks. This could be very bad. So I am back from college, if you hadn't gathered. This bedroom is different than that bedroom. It's actually 2 different rooms. I've been told since I was 12 that who I am is just best suited for a college environment, which to me has the same undertones as telling a child that they're an old soul. But they were absolutely right. I'm like that guy on the socks. That's me in college. I can't believe that I have my old makeup videos, I'd be putting on a full face of foundation with the beauty blender, and right now I'm doing, sorry. I joined a sorority, or I pledged a sorority. I'm in a sorority now, and I'm in it because I was initiated a couple weeks ago. It was over Zoom, and the Wi-Fi went out in my dorm 10 minutes before the ceremony started, so I had to frantically go to this common area, and then a bunch of people showed up there, so I had to run again and set up shop in a bathroom. But yeah, now I'm a sorority gal, and by that I mean a frat gal, because it's technically a frat, which is honestly kind of fitting. I feel I don't know if I express it on here, I feel I have way more of the energy of a frat guy than a sorority girl. As one would probably imagine, social life on campus is very different when there are far fewer circumstantial opportunities to meet people, because you have to make a concerted effort if you want to make friends, and that's kind of foreign to me. I've reached a point where I'm very secure in who I am and oh, I'd be friends with me. And I love connecting with other people, but at my core, I'm an introvert. I've always been pretty shy, which honestly should go without saying. Do you think that someone starts making YouTube videos at 11 because they have a robust and thriving social life? Pfft. I was a very shy child. I kind of relied on just talking to people in classes. Oh my god, I just remembered this story. Okay, quick side note. That just reminded me of a lovely story from freshman year of high school, a time at which I was definitely doing really well. I look like a Tumblr character because I didn't put any concealer on my nose. I was presenting in English. I was the first of 2 presenters. I always have this concern that me talking about how, I wasn't very popular in middle school, when I was 14, that is gonna be a blemish to my credibility, which doesn't make any sense. Okay, I give my presentation. It is met with resounding silence. It's very awkward because you know how you're supposed to courtesy clap when someone is done. It just didn't happen. So then I go sit down, and then the next person airplays their iPad onto the projector screen, and we're at mid-second semester. They airplay their iPad, and it opens on the class group chat that has everyone but me in it. And then later I asked a girl if she would add me to the group chat, and she said no. Well, she didn't really say no. She said that there was a limit, which is not true. I did the thing that makes you look really bad where I Googled it, and I was no, it says that you can have more than 25 people or whatever in a group chat, and she was just I don't know, it's not working. So that was an oof. Why was that relevant? What was I talking about? Oh, friends making friends, most of whom now I am meeting online. And I've met some really wonderful people. But as online conversations go, for every wonderful person, you have 3
Brett Favre, not in his prime. Hail Mary, the nastiest shit.
You should take a study break and let me come over. How about this? You
Okay.
I've also been canvassing for the Georgia Senate runoff elections, which is fun. I had to deal with this I don't even know if you'd call it cognitive dissonance, because all I'm trying to do is get Democrats to vote and get undecideds to vote Democrat. And in my head, I'm well, who am I to proselytize them? But then I'm hold on. 1, these are grown-ass, voting age-ass adults who clearly just lack information, because that's the only way that you can like be undecided right now, is if you don't have all the information. 2, I'm really, where did I put the other blush? I'm really secure in my political leanings right now. And by that, I mean, I know that I could make a good faith argument for my position on any domestic issue. International, we're getting there. Turns out there's a lot of countries and a lot of them don't like each other. Who would have thought? I really do believe though that I could make a case for any of my political leanings without even like using any rhetorical strategies, just using facts and logic. And this is why I really took issue with No Nuance November. I might call this video something like, let's talk NNN, so that you see it and you're like, is she gonna talk about, no, talking about nuance, silly. Anyway, here's my no nuance take. It's bad.
It's bad.
Don't just say
It's bad.
okay?
Why did we do that? Part of being like a political orator, like if you want to loudly preach your politics online, part of that is making your causes palatable to apolitical people, and the left is just like so reluctant to do that. Let's look at this tweet from Cody Johnston, and I'm not hating on Cody Johnston, all right? I've already stated that I want to marry him. But I think this was a bad take. Democrats aren't saying that defund the police is confusing because they would rather use something like reform the police to convince people. They're saying it because they don't want to defund the police. It's that simple. The response to this tweet was divided, and I admit I broke the first tenet of the cum pledge. I argued with leftists. Let me just be very clear before I make this argument that I am not against defunding the police. That'll be clear as I go on, but I just want to have it like right off the bat. Back in June, I made a video about ACAB that I ended up doing like 2 different cuts of because I thought the first cut was like too harsh and extreme. I just never ended up releasing it because I was like, this is like a lot. But okay, anyway, Cody's tweet. The response was divided, and one comment that I saw agreeing with him really got me. Anyone who says they're confused by DTP is being willfully obtuse and or disingenuous. It's not a hard concept. So, I disagree in this case. There are cases in which this is definitely true. For instance, white privilege. White privilege is not an issue of terminology. People who say that they don't understand white privilege are lying. It's a very straightforward concept. It's exactly what it sounds like. You could make the argument that like, because the word privilege originated in academia and like wasn't subject to PR scrutiny, that like it's a little bit of a touchy word, but ultimately people who get angry at the concept of white privilege are angry because they don't want to admit that white people have inherent advantages. It's the idea, not the phrase itself, that pisses people off. Defunding the police, on the other hand, is reforming the police. We're getting caught up in semantics when the left and the undecided, the sentiment is relatively consistent. There are a few points that I want to hit here, and I don't know what order to hit them in because I feel like they're all of like equal importance. Let's start with 1. For someone who like doesn't know or care about social issues, the default is to be pro-police because police represent justice. And are you really going to be anti-justice? And bad apples is a compelling argument for someone who hasn't done any research. Point 2 is that like, all right, I'm extremely steadfast in my beliefs, as I've said before, but I didn't reach this place overnight. I've been reading about politics since I was in 7th grade. And even before that, in like elementary, early middle school, I had kind of gotten sucked into the soft conservative internet because I liked iFunny, and meme culture at that time was like very tacitly, not even tacitly, but conservative. So like if you told me 2 years ago the stuff that I believe in now, I would be baffled. 2 years ago, I had heard of a lot of these concepts, but was just like not sold on them. In order to like support and promote these things, I had to have them rigorously explained to me, which luckily, thanks to the internet, is pretty easy. But you know, not everyone is gonna make the effort to educate themselves. And while I agree that we don't owe everyone an explanation because lots of people are willfully ignorant or bad faith actors and they are just trying to waste your time, they don't want to be informed, I very much disagree with the idea that we don't owe anyone an explanation. As this person said, to my defense, as I was arguing with a leftist in the replies to Cody Johnston's tweet, it's terrible politics to require people to do their own research to understand your policy positions. And like, he's right. And like, I know it's a pain when people are, I don't get it, explain it to me. I know that's so annoying. But then also everyone freaked out because Obama referred to defund the police as a slogan, and they were like, it's not a slogan, it's a policy demand. It is a slogan. It's definitely a slogan. And it's not a policy demand. It refers to policy demands. But have you ever had to explain to someone how defund the police translates into policy? I have. It is not a simple conversation. So why do you want to take money from the police? There's a lot of reasons, but like if we want to look at it strictly monetarily, the vast majority of police officers are not policing in their own communities, and because they're paid by taxes, that means that that community's taxes are ultimately going to go and be used in another community. But then how do you expect these places to stay safe if you're defunding all the public safety? Well, we wouldn't be doing away with all law enforcement. We would just be taking some of the police budget and then using it to address things like mental health and addiction and school safety, because these are things that historically the police have not handled very well. So then why don't we just train the police better? Well, yeah, we also want to do that and, you know, implement more restrictions on use of force, make sure that body cams are used consistently. Aren't you gonna need money to do that? Yes, so what we want to do is we want to redirect funding from some institutions of the police and put that toward more progressive, community-oriented measures. And then we also want to increase funding to other institutions to make sure that the police force that we do have is held accountable for their actions, because that's not really something that we're doing right now. I feel like when your message demands that much clarification, there's something wrong there. Maybe. But that's the thing about progressive terminology as it exists now. It requires nuance, it requires explanation. Things like toxic masculinity, white fragility, the idea of something being a social construct, these are like benign, uncontroversial ideas when you look at what they actually refer to. The social construct one, especially, like that's literally just a neutral statement. It's not pointed, it does not lean in any particular direction. And again, I'm not saying that we owe everyone an explanation, but instead of elaborating on these things, we just kind of expect that people will know what they mean. Confession. I've been involved in politics since I was like 12 years old. I didn't know the proper definition of toxic masculinity until like 6 months ago, maybe. On the left, we have a habit of taking relatively mild concepts and then making them sound really radical, whereas on the right, they do the opposite and their messaging is much more effective. And that's like a whole other video because I have a feeling this one's getting pretty long, even though I'm not even done with my makeup yet. But yeah, a couple days ago, I basically spent an afternoon doing research into, because one, I was interested, but more importantly, I've literally witnessed multiple people who were close to me like go down that hole. Oh shit. All right, my battery's gonna die. So we're gonna charge the battery, I'm gonna finish this, and we'll be back for closing statements. Okay. I don't know if I like this or not. I think where I left off was that I spent an afternoon researching, and I ended up with an 18-page Google Doc that could make for like 4 videos if you guys were interested. So let me know. Basically, to sum it up, some people are bad faith actors and other people are just ignorant, and it's not our fault that they didn't educate themselves, but per the aforementioned outline, it's to our own benefit to be a little clearer about this shit. All right, we haven't done explicit song recs in a while. Spotify Wrapped just came out. Mine's weird. I kind of don't believe them on Thumbnail being my top song, but I do really like it, and I love Brian David Gilbert and Louis Zong, so like you can check that out, and also the other 4 songs. The problem with like my music taste is that I was driving today and I was listening to just like my December playlist, as one does, and I was at the end of the Scheherazade finale, which that in and of itself is 13 minutes, so like I was invested, and the end is just very quiet. It's just kind of like wrapping everything up. I'm at peace. And suddenly